try to maybe think through the potential points of contact and maybe of contradiction between the various contributions, at least to a limited extent. To my mind, it makes perfect sense to end it with this discussion with Thomas Keenan among various types of fruit in an organic supermarket. In a way, it takes us back to the beginning, to Marc's talk about religion, monotheism specifically, as actually a force of sacralization and as something that actually demands or introduces a social turn. And it's about creating a just society, about doing justice to people, and in that sense discussing issues of visibility and representation in the context of social activism in a supermarket that doesn't allow you to do it, so you have to film it secretly, is a nice way of wrapping it all up. But still, let's try to unwrap things again a bit. And before I give people from the audience the opportunity to ask questions, I just wanted to ask Marc if he could respond to the talk by the other Marc in particular. And I was wondering, there I really saw actually quite a tension between Marc's emphasis on religion as criticism or critique, albeit in the form of religion, and Marc Boulos' emphasis on things that go beyond rational thought, go beyond Enlightenment thinking, and perhaps also beyond Marc de Kesel's interpretation of monotheism. So I was wondering if you are in any way inspired to respond to the footage that Marc showed.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, because in a way I didn't. I skipped the part of my paper about religion, and you showed us what religion is. Religion is kind of an imaginary realm of crazy things, where that's monotheism is not crazy. Monotheism is rational religion. And what interested me was the tension between that rationalism and religion, and I didn't really mention the religion. So I have some ideas about it, because it's a difficult. I cannot answer the problem here, but I think, to put it a bit bluntly, I think I have something against the word irrational, because I think this doesn't exist. Even what's happened there, what's happened in that woman who thinks to being visited by Christ, that she can heal some ill child or something like that. There is a rationality in it. Of course, there's rationality, a difficult rationality. I didn't explain that in my paper, because that's. I studied a bit of psychoanalytic theory, and psychoanalysis is the starting point of psychoanalysis is that when you really want to hear someone speaking, if you really want to hear the subject of what he is saying, you have to let him talk as crazy as possible. That woman did, and then you have to look within that wood of craziness to the subject created there. So I think that's the sense of religion. But I think that the monotheistic theory wants to enlighten that, and I'm really fully enlightened even then, because the danger is that, to put it in another way, I think religion, we shall never overcome religion. We shall never overcome the fact that people are a bit crazy and do crazy things out of their mind. But we need, again, some kind of critical tradition who accompany that kind of religiosity. I think this is the core message of monotheism, and it's the core message of enlightenment, that there will be always some kind of crazy religions, and we need a kind of critical critical tradition going next to it. What we see nowadays in our way in which we talk about religion is that we have reduced religion to belief, which is monotheistic in a certain way. Because then we miss the really mission of monotheism. The really mission of monotheism is to criticize that religion that will never go away. It's not a question of belief. It's not a question, is that woman true or false? The question is, there is some truth in it, and we have to talk about it. We have to enlighten that. I don't know if my point is clear. It's a bit besides of the topic of my paper.
But maybe just one more question before I open it up to the audience. I mean, if we talk about this role of criticism, at a certain point you mentioned that there is also a form of self-criticism which is absolutely un-self-critical, and that's precisely what we seem to have in some contemporary forms of monotheism. For instance, that some of which we saw in Marc's work, especially in the first clip. So Al-Qaeda isn't exactly known for its self-criticism, but on the other hand, we have in, let's say, secular, enlightened circles, we have forms of criticism, or maybe it's more, in English one would say, perhaps in this case, critique, that are extremely self-critical, and we always reflect on what we're doing, but it's lost kind of its real edge. It doesn't lead to, let's say, political action anymore. So on the one hand, we have completely unself-critical, manifestations that lead to actually some kind of political or even revolutionary action, but then usually in the form of, as Marc Boulos, called it, paleo, or in the form of paleo-conservative ideology. And on the other hand, we have leftist thinkers who are extremely self-critical, but who are sort of, doing their own thing, and it doesn't really lead to anything concrete. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's not a question actually, but does anybody feel?
Well, I can say something about it. Yeah. When I see that kind of testimony of a fundamentalist who is criticizing the West and who is embracing his mortality and embracing the fact that he will die, it's not that's very normal. When a soldier is going to war, when in antiquity people were fighting, they were embracing death. That's not that crazy. That people want to die, that's a human thing, because death is not that great. I am in the possibility of embracing death. So that was my reaction, and I want to link it to another reflection. The point is not that he is embracing death. The point, when I see such pictures, I see a very classical Western guy going to war and fighting against the enemy. But when I see that Muslim guy, then I see already a Western guy talking to me as the same. He's not a strange guy who is saying something which is strange to me. No, he is already integrated. He is already someone of the West, criticizing the West, and by that being part of the West. So,
yeah, and this
he's my brother. He's my brother. I recognize him. He's always.
So this also touches on the whole issue of the modernity of modern fundamentalism, of contemporary fundamentalism, which we also discussed in previous session. Does either Marc Boulos or Natascha want to respond to this?
Yeah, I guess my question is about your definition of monotheism. You seem to be conflating Judaism, Christianity, and Islam under the rubric of monotheism, and I would submit that there is a huge distinction between Judaism and Islam and Christianity. With Christianity, we have this seeming paradox of it claiming to be a monotheistic religion, but having the Trinity and this figure of Christ, who is both God and man, and a God that is in three parts. And for Jews and Muslims, that is the big blasphemy of Christianity, the very idea that God can be present as a person and is at once God and man. Zizek, in his 2 books on Christianity, The Fragile Absolute and The Serpent and the Dwarf, argues that it is the Trinity that is the truer monotheism because it is a dialectical structure. And that with Judaism or Islam, there is always this, it remains a binary, but with a trinity there can be a resolution that is whole. And I think in the case of the 3 Christians we saw, the 3 Christian groups, the Pentecostalists, the woman who is considered a saint, and then also the African revolutionaries who are both in their traditional religions and consider themselves Christian as well. They are assuming this interstitial relationship between the material realm and the godly realm, which is actually the same place as Christ. I think maybe in Lacanian terms it might be the position of the petit a that participates in both realms. So I wonder whether you think that your argument about the tradition of monotheism being a rational tradition, is it different between Judaism and Christianity, and what is that monotheism you're talking about exactly?
Well, I think, of course, there is a huge difference between the 3 monotheisms. But my point is that they have something in common, which is in the core of the 3 traditions. And this is not a faith in one God. That faith relates to something which is more fundamental. It means criticism against idols. That's what they have in common. And of course, Christianity has done something with that, which is a bit crazy from a monotheistic point, because there is the phantasm of the incarnation. That's their interpretation of the messianism. The point is that messianism has been realized, that the Messiah has been there. But in a certain way, Islam has done the same thing without Messiah, because there the double bind structure is between the law and the salvation. Because confessing myself to be under the law of Islam is already a salvation. So the whole messianic idea is connected to the law. In Christianity, the connection to the law and the Messiah is done by the kind of fulfillment of the law, which is not the case in Islam. It's not the case. In the Islam has not fulfilled the law, but has, in a certain way, the law as such has become perfect. And the whole, what I call the whole perversity of Christianity, the fact that in a double-bind way you can say black and white at the same time, is also present in Islam. That's why monotheism is the shape we are in, but it's a dangerous thing. And that's why we cannot say in our critical tradition that monotheism is dangerous and we have to enlighten ourselves to go away from monotheism. No, enlightenment is the result of monotheism, and we are dealing with the same perverse logic. So that's why I want to in a certain way, to deconstruct the opposition between religion and non-religion, between enlightenment and the obscure traditions of Islam and fundamentalism and so on. They are all product of the same logic, and they are fighting with the same core that is present in these traditions. So I think we have to reframe totally the discussions.
Okay. Maybe just one short question to Natascha. What does it mean that the radicalization of the Enlightenment takes place in the dark, or may take place in the dark?
I think he's referring to the hauntedness of the Enlightenment, and that if you just if you imagine a space where you create a situation where you cast light onto something, you immediately get shadows, and that's it's an image of what is happening in the tradition of the Enlightenments, and it probably connects to what you describe with this double bind that can't be that the Enlightenment couldn't get rid of, but always denies, and this denial creates the haunting, or creates the ghostly nature of things that exist but that don't get recognized as real or as having a status in the real, in the realm of the real. And we have to start dealing with those entities that exist in the shadows, that exist but have no status in the sense of not being real. And this is the challenge, and he says that it's that's the challenge of radicalizing and renewing in the Enlightenments.
And for you, would re-engaging with religion actually be part of that project? Is religion part of this, part of these shadows created by the Enlightenment?
To me, it's confusing to say re-engaging because I don't think that religion has ever ceased to exist within the tradition of the critical left. It was definitely a ghost. It was denied, and therefore became a blind spot. And this blind spot has to be addressed. But I don't know if that means to return to religion. Yeah.
Okay, that's. I think that's pretty much the core of the whole project that you just articulated. Okay, I'm sure we're all good monotheists here in the sense that we're incredibly critical and full of critical questions. So, who wants to say something?
And it's so late, maybe just one question. Can I propose that we discipline ourselves and reduce this to one question?
That's a
great responsibility.
Tremendous responsibility.
You're representing the whole audience.
Good. Well then,
I'm going to pick up on the question. I'm going to pick up on the question of Sven, which was indeed, I think there is a kind of split today between that image we have of religion as kind of unreflected violent action, and on the other hand, the image we have of kind of impotent, neurotic self-criticism of the kind of culture, Western intellectual, Jewish cultural critic. Okay. Now, what I'm interested in to kind of focus that question back to Marc is that, at the end of your paper, you make a reference to Hegel, and you say the problem today is this problem of messianism, so the problem absolute, emerges again. But in fact, I think the real philosophical reference for you isn't Hegel, but Kant. And when you say critique, I hear it really in the Kantian sense. That means trying to discern the proper limits of a field, trying to understand how a certain field functions. And what's very interesting to me is the way that you define monotheistic self-criticism is as a field which is inescapable. So one criticizes God, but in the name of God. There's no outside of God. So there's no such thing as atheism as an outside position of theism. There's only atheism as internal to monotheism. That would be mysticism. You make the link then to leftist cultural criticism, ideology. We know that there's no outside of ideology. All we can do is endlessly criticize ideology at the same time that we reinscribe ourselves in the field. Now that could be the very recipe of a certain kind of impotence, let's say, of today's cultural criticism. And that's precisely the reason why certain theorists, I don't say I agree with this, but I think it's a very strange turn. Everybody knows that in the last 10 years, that certain theorists have turned to religion precisely in order to theorize a solution to the problem okay? And that turn to religion is to say, isn't there a way of thinking, an act, a rupture with that field so that we can get out of that position of being the impotent cultural critic? Ironically, so people like, you know this, Benjur, Zizek, whatever, are referring to religious traditions in order, in fact, to exit precisely from the problem of endless monotheistic internal criticism. So that's, I would like to hear how you would respond, let's say, to that challenge. It's also the same question that was asked before. I thought it was an excellent, very simple question. Is there an outside religion? And your answer basically was no. No, in fact, I want to deconstruct that distinction, and I could say, if I want to be critical, that you can endlessly deconstruct that, and you always end up in the same place. That's the one.
Is this a question?
That's the one point. Well, indeed, how then would you defend? What I don't understand is, are you analyzing what you think is today's cultural position? Are you giving a kind of symptomatology? Are you endorsing monotheistic self-criticism, that's what we're missing today, we need more of that? Is that monotheistic self-criticism precisely a problem we need to escape from? That would be the position, for example, of a Zizek or an Adel. Are you, I kind of don't understand exactly how you're positioning yourself in this debate.
Well, I don't agree with people like Badiou, Zizek, and I don't agree with the idea of the act, that to go outside is possible. I think. So I think I agree with the fact that we are we are stuck. But that's not the way, because I think I want to analyze the question, because if I ask myself, are we stuck into religion? What the hell am I saying? I think we have to redefine the terms. And that we are there the victims of a kind of 2 or 3 centuries post-Kantian thinking about religion. That religion is something as a belief. I think the whole opposition between religion critique and religion, that opposition doesn't work, because that's in our tradition. So, of course, there is religion, and that's what we have seen. That religion is that very ungraspable imaginary field, and I think we have to endorse that field will never go away. Not because, but what is dangerous, of that field of imaginary religion is dangerous, but it's also dangerous to think that there is an absolute alternative to it, because that traps in the same position. So we have to redefine the mission of what today religion should be. And that is the same mission as what enlightenment has to do. Enlightenment has to, and in that way I'm a bit Kantian, enlightenment has to permanently enlighten the world, because the darkness is not something there will never be a messianic age after the fact that life is also darkness. But it's not Kantian in the sense that I can manage, or that I can control that domain. That's impossible. I think it more in the Adornian way, that we have that kind of untrust, which is the mission of reason. And I think in our religious tradition is the same. And I think my accusation is to the Western religiosity, that Western religiosity has been afraid of its critical tradition. It has lost its 2 dimension. And that I agree with Badiou. They say religion has nothing to do with truth. Now, of course, religion is monotheism for us, and so it's a truth discussion, and we have to reintroduce the truth in it. That's it. But I don't know where I would.
You wanted to make a quick comment.
Remark, it's not that there is no outside. It is actually Jean-Luc Nancy's project is what you are doing at the moment, and with the slight correction, there is the question is whether or not there is an outside, or whether the God is the no God, or the God of negative theology, and so on and so forth. It is precisely the ambiguity of that traditions that articulate that particular notion of God, which is very open to interpretation. It is in our hands how we deal with it. Whether we close ourselves and say, like in the last book, there is no outside information. No. It's the ambiguity of the circulation, and it is very free to get.
One more minute.
I just would be curious if you would agree with this very quick characterization of your position. What I think is very interesting is that most philosophers today are turning to Christianity. And with this fascination with the act, I'm tempted to say, in the psychoanalytic sense, it's quasi-psychotic. They're fascinated with this very violent act that will change everything.
Yeah.
Whereas you seem to be pleading for good old-fashioned Jewish neurosis. Like what religion needs today is to become more neurotic about themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And to just become less certain. Whereas most other, let's say, philosophers who are sharing
I'm very Freudian in that.
for kind of Christian psychosis.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said a lot of Lacanian theory, but I'm very Freudian in that. We're all bourgeois. We don't like that to be bourgeois, but neurotically, that's what we are. Just be a bit enlightened, that's all.
Now we're talking.
Okay, yeah, and let's continue to talk afterwards. Is there, because, I mean, I really admire and applaud everybody's stamina, but I think now we've probably stretched it to the limit. Again, thanks to everybody. If we can learn one thing from today, it's surely that, yeah, we need to define what monotheism is or should be, otherwise so-called Bishop Williams and Josef Ratzinger will do it. The next session in 2 weeks will be the one not focused on monotheism, but on various alternative religions and the esoteric tradition. Yeah, once again, thanks everybody. Now it's time for borrel and dinner and what have you.